Hello there! Today we'll be brewing a clean fermented hard seltzer. So let's go ahead and get started. For this recipe, the ingredients are yeast, yeast nutrient, corn sugar or dextrose, a little bit of lactic acid, and 3.7 gallons of carbon filtered water. We'll start by collecting that carbon filtered water, and we'll immediately stick some of it in the fridge to help us cool down a little bit later. The remaining water we'll stick in our kettle and go ahead and start the heat to boil. While the water is heating, we'll go ahead and collect our 2.5 pounds of dextrose. You don't have to use dextrose, you can also use table sugar, but this is what I'm using in this case. At about 180 degrees, we're going to stir our sugar in to make sure it's dissolving, and then continue heating it to boil. Once the water has made it to boil, let it boil for about 8 to 10 minutes. At this point, shut your kettle off and add your yeast nutrient. Nutrient's important here since we want a really clean fermentation. There's pretty much no flavors to hide behind, so any yeast character is going to be extremely noticeable in the final product. At this point, I'm adding the rest of my chilled water back in to drop the temperature down to our yeast pitch temperature of 70 to 80 degrees before putting it in the fermenter. After a quick original gravity check, we're ready to pitch our yeast. I'm using San Diego Super Yeast by White Labs for really clean, clear fermentation, and I'm going to let it ferment anywhere from 70 to 80 degrees. Fermentation took 2 to 2.5 weeks before I started detecting less of that yeast character, earthy off flavor, and I was happy with how the seltzer tasted. I actually added a mixture of gelatin and activated charcoal to help fine up the beer and calm those off flavors down even more. Probably wouldn't do that in the future since, as you can see, it pretty much ruined any chances I had to recapture my yeast. But after 24 hours of letting that fining mixture settle, it was ready to keg and carbonate. I carbonated it a little more than I would my beers, so I let it sit on about 40 psi for 2 days before backing it off to serving pressure. And here's how it turned out. On the left you can see it was a little hazy after first pour, but after a week or two it really cleared up nicely. So, final thoughts on the hard seltzer. The main thing that I was looking for here was a really clean fermentation. I didn't want the earthy off flavors that come with residual yeast, and I really didn't want water flavors like chlorine or any of that coming through. I think using the San Diego Super Yeast and the yeast nutrient really made that possible, and I'm really pleased with the clarity of the final product as well as the flavors that come through when you add any, if you add any at the end. I have people that come to my house that aren't always beer drinkers, and it's nice to have something for them as well, and also something for me because I really like it. I like how carbonated it is. It's kind of a pain to pour out of the tap since you could pretty much get mostly head when you pour it, but if you're a little patient, a really refreshing, nice drink to have on tap. So cheers!